Okay, I would like to call this meeting to order. It is September 24th, 6:30 on the dot, and need a roll call. So, Bill.
John here.
Maria's here.
Jones here.
Church here.
Leonard here.
Clerk Buchanan, did we meet all certification of compliance for open meeting law?
We are.
So then we are to the primary objective for tonight, and that is the presentation from the organizational assessment that Public Administration Associates put together after we approved it in like June timeframe. So it's all yours, David.
Where would you like me to present from? I don't want everybody to crane their necks here, but is this okay here?
Yeah, I think the microphone actually picks up on the video too, so that might be a good place. Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Good, so let me hand out, oh, thank you very much.
We can pass them down.
Yeah, one for each board member and then the clerk.
I don't want to hurt my neck.
So, my name is Dave Bretl. I'm from Public Administration Associates, and as Chair Jones had indicated, you had retained our company earlier in the year to do an organizational assessment, which was not intended to be a complete or thorough deep dive of every issue that the town has, but more of a survey for us to come in, to talk with staff, to look at some of your key documents, and to make some recommendations to you of things that can be implemented. I had spent my career in government, and I tend to prefer studies that you can actually do something with, because oftentimes you get them and they stick them on the shelf, and so maybe some of these may seem like simple answers to you, but they are the product of thought and two things that we think that you can implement and that you will have improvements in your organization if you do so. Just by way of background, my partner Chris has gotten detained a little bit here. He'll be joining us later, but I thought we can certainly get this started, and he'll be here for questions and to talk about some of the parts that he did. So I want to take a little bit of a pause now and just talk about kind of an experience that this may or may not resonate with you. So 2 years ago, I was brought in as an interim administrator in a town in southeast Wisconsin that it was a village that had actually replaced 3 of their board members, right? A new chair and 2 new board members. And there was quite a lot of upheaval at the time. There was considerable differences of opinion during the election, let's say. And so I mention that because it really carried over into the start of that new term for that board. And it was interesting because some of it was differences of opinion on how things should be run or how things were always run. But a lot of it was just flat out miscommunication, that people drew, and Chris is here and I just got him started. Chris, people drew conclusions that were not necessarily true, and I can tell you what those were. So for the new board members who were coming in, had some serious philosophical differences with the old board members, but not necessarily with staff, right? So staff is sitting here thinking, well, these people are joining the board, they don't like us, they don't think we've been doing a good job because they obviously want change. Well, that's not true either, right? I mean, necessarily true. So a lot of it was just communication, just to sit down and say, hey, this is the way the system works. We're the new board, and some existing board members, but just to have that conversation and to clear the air. It wasn't a referendum on staff. I don't believe, and both Chris and I think that you have a very quality workforce and staff here. And some valuable employees who know a lot about town government and government. So I just put that out, that communication, education is going to be the key to this. Now, by the same token, that doesn't mean just because new members are coming to the board that their ideas shouldn't be valued or that they don't understand anything. Sometimes those new ideas are just what the organization needs. So respect needs to be given to that too, and for staff to be able to take the direction of the board and to implement that in day-to-day operations. And I think that's what I see right now, and Chris might have a little bit different take on it, but I think we've got a lot of people, both as supervisors and as staff, who really have the best interests of the community in mind, who are really passionate about the town of East Troy, but different visions about what that means, and that's okay, that's healthy, but you gotta talk through those and then set that direction, and that's the board's responsibility ultimately to do, with input from stakeholders, from members of the community, from your staff, from your management team, right? But to come up with what that vision is, and so one of our recommendations is going to be strategic planning, which is not an overnight process, but is something that I think is important, because before, you can say, well, staff isn't implementing what it is we want, you need to decide what that is, and that can mean different things to different people, and gosh, Chris and I have seen this in government. Some people aspire to be the lowest tax community. That's a very important thing, to have a very low tax rate. Others want a high level of service, and then there's all these variations in between, right? So the key is just to decide what it is that you want to be as a community and as a town, and to get together and agree, or even agree to disagree on some of those main points, and then to move forward as an organization. I don't know, Chris, anything just about the general levels of staffing staff? We had a good experience.
Yeah, we have a very good experience. You have a very efficient and effective staff, there's no doubt about it. There are some things that, improve the organization, but, if time permitting, and you gotta let time permit, to improve. But no, we were very, we did a very thorough review, and the staff gave us everything they needed, and we appreciate that. And they do have a very effective and efficient staff, so, but we got some work to do, I think.
And so we kind of set the stage with that, because the comments that are gonna come are not an indictment of any individual in the organization, right? It's not to chastise anyone, because we think overall, you got a staff that runs things well. So let's start out with the first recommendation that both Chris and I had come up with, and if we get you on the next slide there, which is, we think that you would benefit from an administrator, and that can mean a lot of different things. There are 2 town administrators in the county, in Delavan, and I'm doing one right now in the town of Lynn, so there certainly is precedent for that. There's also villages with much smaller populations than yours that have administrators. And so why do we make that recommendation? It isn't to babysit staff, it isn't to make sure that they're coming in on time, or that members of your management team are taking appropriate lunch breaks or anything like that. They are a self-starting group, and they're knowledgeable in what they do. We feel that it changes the communication flow, and that it would really benefit this organization, because you have a single point of contact then in town hall that communicates with your board chair, with your board, and on a regular basis, and can meet and take those ideas, communicate them to staff, get the ideas back from staff, and then communicate that to the board. We think that you might want to start out to do this on a part-time basis, and I say that with a little bit of hesitation, because everybody is pretty busy here with their day jobs, the regular jobs that they're doing, but we think that a member of staff could potentially do that with an appropriate stipend, and they wouldn't necessarily relieve them of all their day-to-day duties of their other job, but we think that it would really be a benefit to your organization. I don't know, Chris, anything on that?
Town of Rome, I just did a study for Town of Rome, and I didn't think they were ready for a full-time administrator. My study said the police chief is a great leader. I think he'd be a good administrator, and he did a great job. So, that's an example of the Town of Rome, which is they carry our head up that way. So there's precedent for that.
I think conducting regular department head meetings, and you can, again, there's a danger here with some of the stuff that we're talking about, and you might think that we're scaled too large, because to have a department head meeting, you should have 15 department heads or a huge building or something like that, but it's more about the communication and the regularity of it and the process that's more important than, you can all get together in a minute or 30 seconds here, but to have a regular department head meeting, to get the concerns and the beefs and the good ideas of the department heads, then for that administrator to meet regularly with the town board chair, you got the administrator at all the meetings, you making recommendations to the board. We just feel that would be one of those low-hanging fruit. Any questions? We'll take questions at the end of this too, and we can keep marching along here.
We have department head meetings almost every day.
Good.
The three
And
of us.
Do those ideas get communicated out then to the board? Or?
Yeah, we all converse, so.
Good.
And things are brought to
To the board.
to the meeting, yeah. Things are brought, for a lot of good stuff on the agenda.
Yeah, I would just say in that process, having somebody who consistently reports out probably and meets with the chair is, I guess, what we're recommending.
Would you recommend that be not someone that's on the board, somebody that's already on staff, or bringing somebody in?
I think it couldn't be a board member, so by law, you can't do both. But I think you could either task a staff, a management team member with a part-time kind of, and see how it goes. It might be overwhelming, or you could bring somebody in from the outside. Could be a fairly expensive position, and maybe more than what you'd want to do right now.
Sure.
And it would be, you could, conceivably somebody would do it on a part-time basis, but that would be probably pretty tough to recruit unless you had somebody in the community who was used to doing that. So, second item that we had on here is to conduct board training, and this I think is something that's very important, particularly when you have a turnover in the board. And again, it's I was a board member. You could say on the school board, and I was kind of on the outside looking in, and I didn't like a lot of the things that they did, and so I didn't even trust their training when I was a board member. Right? I wasn't even sure what they were telling me staff was correct. But what was important in that is education, and you can get, I just did this at the county, you just have a regular schedule of a training night. Maybe it's quarterly. Take on a topic each night. I had some public records, open meetings. You could take on code of ethics for local government officials, duties of different town officials, officers, you name it, tax levy, and tax cap as a night. You could have each department come in even quarterly, just to, pretend you're starting from day one. This is what we do. That's what we would do in the county, is we'd have, new board members, and we'd have the department heads come in, tell what it is they do, how big their staff is, what their budget is, all those things, just general education. And the more you can learn, the better. There's also resources out there. The Towns Association has a ton of training material. Barb's involved in that, and I encourage you to do that. You can get your town attorney to speak on these topics. Sometimes the county offers training on these topics as well, or you can get speakers in. But we'd encourage you, anytime that board members can interact with staff is a good thing. So if you can do ride-alongs with the police department, ride-alongs with the public works department, go on a tour of the road projects that you have coming up, go on a tour of your police department, public workshop, all of those, spend time with the department heads and get to know them and get to know the challenges that they're going through. And department heads too, I mean, it's a two-way street, so educate. That's one of the biggest jobs, I think, of managers, is to be able to educate and to keep an open mind and understand, when you're done with your tour, the board might not be in lockstep with you, right? But at least they know some of the reasons why the pressures and things that you have, that you have to deal with. Any questions on that? It seems like a simple thing, but you can implement it free. All right, then we get into some of the meatier ones here, and we left at the point, so you may have resolved or be on the path to resolving some of these issues, but if not, we'll offer our point number 3, which would be on next slide there, which is to renew employment contracts or adopt an employee handbook or ordinance. So when we were here last, we understood that you had employment contracts with all of your employees that they expired on December 31st, 2025, that they were still in the process of evaluating those. That at the time we were here, I think it was that day, there was an employee handbook that was circulated to the group. So I'm not sure, have you made any more progress on that since we left, or is that? Okay. Then this is timely then, right? So let's talk about it, because it's very important that you retain your staff, and it's very important to your staff to know what their future is. So we'll start out with the premise, and not to make anybody mad, but employment contracts with every employee is very unusual in our experience. I don't know, Chris, if we've not seen that. It doesn't mean that it's bad or illegal or something like that. We think a better practice would be to have a comprehensive employment ordinance or a handbook, and we'll describe some of the reasons for that, and not the contracts. Some of the challenges of contracts are, it's an administrative burden and not the end of the world, but you have to prepare them, they expire, you have to keep on track of that. There can be inconsistency that can develop in those contracts, different terms for different employees, or contracts that were signed at different times where a manual or ordinance would lock that down. The rigid commitments, and you're binding the town into multi-year raises when you don't know exactly what the future is going to be like in 3 years. Some of the termination provisions that you have in there impose majority votes that aren't required by state law. So that being said, but you've got those contracts, right? And you've got employees who are counting on what's the future going to bring for them. So they are very reluctant to say, well, let's just tear up the contracts until something else is in place, right? And that's completely understandable. So you've got the employee handbook, and that, like you said, is the way that we would recommend doing it. I like ordinances, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But how you do that handbook, we think is really important. And so we believe that in order to have something that's going to be effective, that's going to create harmony and less disruption in your organization, that be something that is collaboratively produced. And we just had a recommendation in here that you consider an employee and employer committee or work group, if you want to call it that, maybe two of each, and sit down and start looking at the template. Another danger is just adopting a template, because there are differences. It doesn't work. There's differences between your organization and other organizations, nuances and things like that. And also, when you adopt a template, you have really not much skin in the game. It's like, oh, this came from somebody, I don't know, maybe you remember it, follow it. So when you develop it yourself, you have, you're invested in it, and it's more meaningful to you. You might, there's going to be a lot of things you probably agree on, surprisingly, in producing that, because everybody's got to get the work done, right? And but the employees, I think, and your management team will know some of the pitfalls to avoid, and some of the nuances. And board, you're gonna, you've got your perspective on it as well. So now that may not be something you finish in the next 3 or 4 months. I don't know. You could, but I wouldn't rush that process. So you've got these contracts that are ending, that date is looming, and so you'd hate to do something hasty and throw together a book that you're gonna live to regret later. So one option might be to extend those employment contracts for a period of time until you can complete that, have a year contract or something, or 6-month contract. But it's important that the successor to the contracts be in place and that, that people have had a voice and input into that. Hey, Chris, any thoughts on that?
You go.
That's for non-union employees, correct?
Yes, yeah, you've got a union and that, they get a contract. Any questions on that? It's important to do and at least, you know, for your employees to see where this is heading and,
And the report has some more details.
Yeah.
Regarding this, so.
Do you have any,
Big picture.
estimated timeline, just experiential from past that, let's say it's a 3-month process, a 6-month process, what would you recommend?
I'll let Chris answer first.
Oh, I've been all over the board on those, so, you know, I think you got at least 6 months. I really do, figuring out, because you don't meet every day on that, you know, maybe, you need a good start. A template is a good place to start. But yeah, I'd say 6 months would be a reasonable amount. June 1st would be, you know, if you wanna have a good day to extend those other contracts for 6 months and then have this done. I don't think there's that much.
No, I
It's
wouldn't
gonna be an
say,
issue with it.
yeah, maybe 4 months or
Yeah.
6 to 6. It's a smaller organization,
Yeah.
so it's not, you're not bringing a cast of thousands together, but it's terrible to have to do it with a gun pointed to your temple that we gotta do this by December, you know, and then you got the holidays and that whole thing, so I
That's just-
give some, I mean, you can start.
Yeah, I'm just looking for some rough, so,
Yeah.
we're not gonna do it in 2 months, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that's
But we're not gonna take 5 years either. So, that's all I'm trying to do.
4 to 6 months, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Any comments on that or thoughts? I mean, we got folks who have contracts and we're not trying to be mean-spirited or anything to you. I think this would move you to a better practice. All right, well, in conjunction with that is our 4th point, which is a classification compensation plan. And so if you are committed to say, look, we are maybe going to extend these employment contracts because we think that project 3, you know, will take that amount of time, you might want to queue this one up too. So what a class comp study is it looks at the different positions in your organization and it starts with really an interview with employees and with the management team. What is it that you do? What do your employees do? Where's your job description? And then get that. Figure out a group of comparable communities, and that is a little bit of an art. Population, geography, sometimes even I've learned the proximity to lakes impacts that. But I would recommend getting a company that would do that. They go out and then develop a pay plan at the end of the day based on what comparable positions make, and you can get as elaborate as you want to. It can have a step system in it, and you don't have to give the steps automatically. Those could be earned, or you can. But that starts to help staff feel like, okay, I know, you know, there's gonna, if I stick with this and am successful, there'll be some upward progression for me here. It also gives, you know, the board control over what expenses are going to be. And predictability. So I think it's important it's also important for internal equity, right? So you want to make sure that if I'll use fire chief because you don't have one, right? So if I'm the fire chief of the town of East Troy, I want to know that I'm, you know, in the ballpark of chiefs of similar sized communities. So that's the external comparability, but it also looks internally at how are your jobs stack up from a education requirement, experience requirement, to make sure that there's equity within the organization as well. So an important thing to do, I think we do it, not you have to hire us, or we do it relatively cheaply, I think, just compared to other proposals that I've seen, but we can get you a list of vendors. I think it's that important that you can show it, and it's hard to do it on your own. I think I haven't seen a lot of those successful because everybody's got a different idea of who they should be.
I had given Chairman Jones a contact for that previously, but that pushed us out.
I wonder about, in this day and age, could we use AI to do a search and generate results in a certain region of a certain size municipality?
It sure can't hurt. I was just gonna say a funny AI story. I had to do the graphics on my PowerPoint. I put a little shoot community logo on there, so it's not flawless, but no, you absolutely could. What you wanna do is identify, comparable communities, and it probably is not gonna crank out your pay schedule, but it could probably get you.
Ranges or?
It's hard to find communities that, because AI will obviously search the internet, correct? And I don't know if there's a lot available, that is public record, well, it's public record, but it's not out there. But it's worth a try.
Yeah, it's definitely worth it.
And I've done some internal, when I was administrator, I did some of my own stuff, but for the first one, it might be easier. You only have 7 to 8 employees, whatever, they're not contract, so it's not a big job.
On the clerk stuff where we see a lot of salary surveys, but then you have, okay, this person has 3 years of experience and your community's this size, and it's all over the place, all over the place. So it's very hard, I think, doing something like this classification and breaking down the duties of the position would be more equitable than just shooting out and saying every clerk treasurer, every clerk, or whatever out there, because it's all over the place.
Yeah, that's and I appreciate you saying that, because that is the danger, and even, in moments of frustration, I would try to do my own, and it's like, it's very dangerous to compare apples to, sometimes police officer, we can say, kind of agree on, unless there's extra duties or things like that, but as you point out, especially in smaller towns where you're wearing 6 different hats, so the clerk here might do something different. Anyway, any other questions on that last comp, I think?
I got a
Oh, I'm
question.
sorry.
I worked for the city of Milwaukee for 20 years, and they have a thing down there called VOI, and it lists all the salaries and all the different titles, and it lists the pay ranges that you can look up. So I don't know if that's a possibility. You could ask AI for VOI of similar sites.
Probably, I just retrieved, I was trying to find some examples, some pay plans and things for you here, just to give you an idea. But I think it would be worth at least putting out, and again, you guys all have to decide this, but if you say, look, let's do the handbook, let's do a class comp study, then I would put out like a request for qualifications or even an RFP to firms to do that, the class comp study, and you'd probably get anywhere from 8,000 to 60,000.
I know that was my question, was could you give me a range of what the ballpark of doing this classification comp study would be? And does a third party take some of the pressure off, people fighting internally to?
It takes the pressure off everybody but the consultant, yeah. No, you're right, that's a big part of it, is, is having a third party come in who doesn't have a lot of baggage, who can look at things objectively. I would say, Chris, what would we price something like this for? Probably under 10.
Yeah, under 10 with this, I've seen them up at 30, because like this, they have 8 employees.
Yeah.
But, yeah, 7,500 to 15.
I would,
For the other firms to,
Yeah.
put
That's
all
what the village told me they paid, right around 7,500.
is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It looks like that's in the report on the bottom of page 7 too.
I know there's some big firms at the Baker Utilities and Pay Group, and they'll charge a lot, but I think there's other.
small firms, they do this.
Do you have any RFP templates that you?
I bet we could, because we get them all the time, so I'll.
It just makes it easier.
Yeah, I'll make a note.
Here.
I'm gonna lean hard on you.
Let's see, actually, I think.
Here's the pen too.
Yeah, here, oh, that's all right, Chris has got it.
All right.
Okay, good, I'm glad we're in the same ballpark. our fifth, suggestion that we had here was to develop a strategic plan, and so this kind of